On today's episode, we'll talk about the importance of having a healthy fear, the art of silent communication, no secret cinema, and of course, when to say, you got it. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling.
Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to The Op, the podcast where we talk about operating the art of visual storytelling. I am your host, Dave Comides, and I'm coming to you from Chicago, America, where I'm shooting a TV show. And since I'm in town, I thought, I'll talk to locals. And so today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Shannon DeWolfe, who I've worked with a couple times before. She is a local second AC, although she's actually about to travel quite far away for another job, which hopefully we'll hear about. And some of the things she's worked on: The Bear, Fargo, Utopia, Empire, Perception, American Horror Story. She is really involved in Local 600, which I also want to ask her about, and is just a great part of the camera crew that when you work with her keeps everything moving. Shannon, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And welcome back to Chicago. I think this is the 4th time I've seen you.
Is that right?
Yeah, over the years.
You didn't work on Powers, that first thing I did you?
No, I didn't. I met you the first time you were prepping Widows.
Widows, that's right.
But you were prepping during the day, and then you came out on our TV show Electric Dreams.
That's right, with John Lindley.
Yeah,
that's right. I was prepping in the afternoon, and then I'd shoot nights with you and John Lindley, because John was like, are you going to be in town? Can you come in and do this? Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
right.
So
you were a little guest star on our show. We had quite a few operators on that you've had on this show as well. We had Buzz Moyer.
Oh, Buzz was there? Okay.
Yeah. And then he left to do the post.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Will Arnott come out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I would have been I would have been freaked out if I knew I was coming in to fill in for all of them.
And then we had, Dave Comides.
That's fantastic. And then, so wait, we did that? Then did we do something in between that? Oh, you did Widows, the reshoots?
I did the reshoots.
That's
I happened to be in Keslow Camera pre-prepping a show that I was doing, and I overheard Chris Fleury in the bay next to me say to the rental house manager, Jim Summers, do you have an extra camera card around here I could borrow? And I was looking at the plethora of cards that I had sitting around, and I went over and I introduced myself and I said, hi, I'm Shannon DeWolfe. I'm a local second. I heard you need a camera card. I happen to have a couple here. I know you're only shooting for one day, so if you want, please have your pick. And then he in turn said, well, thanks. And also, are you a second familiar with film? And I said, well, I am. He said, well, do you want to come out? And he's like, Dave Comides is going to come out and shoot Widows. And I said, oh, I know Dave. This is perfect. Yeah. So. Oh,
now I remember it. So, because we did reshoots for Widows, but you were on the final thing that we did where I actually DP'd the end. Oh, okay, yeah, because I came out and we reshot the end of the movie a little bit, which Sean Bobbitt wasn't available for, and Steve wanted me to DP it, and I was just like, what?
Yeah, so you came in,
right.
You
now
were
I remember
guest star on my show, and then I came out and was
it
guest star on your show.
It literally was half a day, as I remember, like just that little final end of the scene.
Yep.
There you go. Good times. Well, I didn't realize we've actually worked that much together, but and then we did Justified last summer, and now I'm here in the winter, and it's like 52 degrees, and I'm really happy because I didn't expect this. So tell me, what's your story? How'd you get here?
It's funny. It is something that I just always wanted to do, and we don't have family in the industry. It's just something that I always knew that I would do, and I can't explain it. I think we even found some ridiculous school project from kindergarten. Like, I want to make movies.
That's awesome.
And
are you from Chicago?
I am.
You born
I'm originally from Gurnee, Illinois, which is on the Wisconsin border. But yeah, I would watch we'd have the Oscars on and watch them back in the 80s, 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And when I would watch, I just had this sense of belonging. And you have the sense of like watching the people up there like I knew them.
That's cool.
And it was this weird excitement, and it just never wavered. And then, I went to film school, and
Where'd you go to film school?
I went to Columbia College.
Which
Chicago.
back then wasn't quite what it is now, because I've heard now it's like a pretty formidable film school. Was it back then?
Yeah, I think so for film.
Yeah.
And, luckily I didn't have to leave the state,
Yep.
live at home, and et cetera. And film back then, right? This is prior to digital era. And in my local hometown, ironic, there was a director who was making a movie. And I got wind of it, and I was like, wow, Gurnee, Illinois, there's, Patrick Reed Johnson is making a movie called 5/25/77 about the day Star Wars came out.
Oh, how
And
cool.
I
think I sort of remember reading about this in a weird way.
Probably.
Because just because of what it was, I mean,
Yeah.
what the story was. Oh, that's funny.
So
Wow.
he drank coffee at my local coffee shop. So of course I had to introduce myself.
Did you know who he was, or you found out who he was?
I found out who he was, and I just sort of pestered him until he made me his assistant. I was 20 years old. So you could say I've been working in the industry. Your first paycheck is when you're working, by the way.
Yeah.
And I was 20. Couldn't even buy liquor. I was useless in that sense. I'm like,
So you became the director's assistant.
became the director's assistant. It was
Wow.
terrible.
Oh.
But I had a great attitude.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because I think later in the movie, when things got going, he placed me in the art department, and I just made props and things. And I was so happy to live in this workshop and make props. And then, so I took a semester off of college to do this.
Oh, wow.
And my parents were happy. They're like, yeah, this is real world experience. This is a real movie. You're getting real paycheck. And then, I went back to school, finished my degree. And then they did reshoots for the movie. And I actually got to be on the movie as a camera assistant.
Like a PA loader?
No, like
or-
I was I was a second AC.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you know what you were doing?
Enough, right? I mean, I had been a part of this movie since he
Yeah.
was writing the script, so it kind of didn't, I was in. And, yeah.
Wait, back up a second. I'm confused. So, did you know him from the coffee shop? Like,
Yeah.
you had met him before and found out he was a director and, oh, okay, gotcha. So, it wasn't like you...
Well, I
just
took
happened to be-
interest in him because he was a director, writer.
But you met him through the coffee shop
And I met him
were
through
like,
the coffee
okay,
shop.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you heard he was a...
Starbucks.
Wow.
We're all hanging out where I worked because you could work for 20 hours a week and get health insurance while you're trying to be a film student.
There you go. They say a lot of bad things about Starbucks, but there you go. Was the DP operating on that?
No, for reshoots, I think so. It's all
Yeah.
kind of fuzzy. It seems a
That's
long
right.
time
It was
ago.
a long time ago. But so is that what gave you, like, did you want to be in camera before that? Or
Absolutely.
that? Oh, okay.
It was always camera, but he had offered me this position,
Yeah.
and there was no way that I was going to say no.
Yeah, yeah. And so did you, like, pester the camera people while they were shooting and try to figure stuff out, or?
No, I was so involved with kind of still being his assistant, and then also like building props and whatever needed to get done. I was like, I'm your girl. I am your girl. I will, you tell me how to do something and I'll
So
do
you
it.
got farmed out to different...
Absolutely.
That's great.
And it was the best time of my life. I mean, it's like, rogue, it's just rogue real world
Yeah.
film school.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and also, there's something great about that because, like, it's almost like you can only go up, right? I mean, I guess you could, like, crash the car or something like that. But basically, since you don't know anything, you're only hopefully going to get better. And it's just like,
Oh, absolutely.
I wanna learn
and,
everything.
Sometimes he would ask me to do things and I'd go down a path and he'd be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well,
that's
but
great.
again, he's like, and later it was very sweet, like I said, on the reshoots, that I got to come in on the camera department, and it was a real growing moment.
Is that something you asked for?
No. In fact, at that point, I was asked by the camera department to come on and be a second
Because they'd seen you and met you
And because
whatever.
I was just kind of in that
That's great.
world
Cool.
with people. And then I happened to mention, like, I was on this the first time around.
Yeah, right. Oh, because these were new people that were. I
All
got
new
you.
people, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And have you like worked with any of those people since?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The Chicago crews are
Small. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a tight knit family.
And what year was this? Or ballpark?
Oh God, this probably was 2005.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Yeah.
So it actually wasn't that long ago, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things. That's great. So did you basically go, okay, now I'm going to be in camera? I'm assuming this was a non-union show.
Yes, I believe it was. Yeah, it must have been because I wasn't in the union yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got an internship through Columbia College to be on a movie called Grace is Gone with John Cusack. And that's where I sort of had my first big girl job of full-time camera intern, I believe is what I was.
But that was a paid gig.
It was a paid gig.
Yeah.
I was there every day. I was on the call sheet. And then Peter Kuttner
Wow.
and Dave Morenz were sort of instrumental in my upbringing, and they're Chicago legends. But,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So let me ask you a question for people who may be listening to this and wanting to go that route. How do you be a successful camera PA and learn stuff, but not be in the way, because you probably don't know quite what you're doing, but be in the way enough that you're being asked to, you know what I mean? Because we've all seen the great camera PAs and we've all seen the really bad camera PAs, and
it's all about your energy. And do you show up with the willingness to learn, but also more, can you listen and watch? Know when to hang back. Know when it's appropriate to step forward. Time your questions.
yeah. There's a lot about being just aware of, I mean, the truth of the matter is, it's something that even now when I talk to established operators, it's like reading the room, recognizing what the energy is in the room, and realizing, like, now is not the best time for me to ask how a follow focus works, because there's something really bad going on, as opposed to at lunch going, hey, at some point, can I ask you to break that down for me so I understand? Yeah, sure, whatever. But I think reading the room, right? It's just...
Yeah, read the room. Figure out where can you be helpful. Do the ratchet straps on the truck after you unload the truck, do they need to be hung back up on the wall? Is there tidying that you can do? Are there things that you can help clean up or move? Figure out where you can be helpful, and just watch and listen and watch the rhythm and the process. And I think that's a big part of it too, is getting your set-a-kit down.
Yeah, totally. And is that mostly just watching and learning and not like holding back until you figure it out and then slowly moving forward, or is it?
Yeah, you definitely, and it's a hard line, because you obviously, if you're an intern, right, you're probably younger and hungry, and you have this energy and this willingness to prove that you'll show up and do everything. And it's hard because it's counterintuitive when we need you to step back, especially if it's the start of a new show. The main crew is still breaking in and finding their rhythm. And it can be hard when you have a gung-ho PA who wants to jump in there and help too, and you're like, whoa, Nelly.
Yeah. Well, that's what I kind of meant by, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but we've all seen those people who don't know that. I mean, you put it really well. And it's like, I think at the end of the day, it's like you want to prove I'm going to be an asset and not a problem.
Right. And it's helpful too. It's the responsibility of the established camera team to have tasks or priorities laid out for interns in the first couple weeks to give them something to do. And, if you're a second or an established assistant on a show, you should know that you're going to inherit this PA or intern, and they're going to have that energy. And it's up to you to say, listen, we are going to get to the finer points. However, for the first week or two, this is what I really want you to focus on. And don't take it personally if we're like, just get back, get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
Let everybody settle, and let them know too that it's not you. And we're not taking things out of your hands because we're trying to baby you. We're trying to protect you. We're trying to get through the day and the show ourselves. The first week is critical. And sometimes it can be a lot if you have to focus on the front of the house of what's going on with the new actors, director, new crew. And then you also have to worry about what's going on in the back of the house if you have this person that you are responsible for grooming and hopefully, raising up within the department.
That's really interesting because the thing is, I'm on set near the dolly, so I don't see all that truck stuff that happens and all the stuff you're talking about. And I kind of, the second you said it, I get it. But I kind of didn't realize that the second AC is probably going, okay, I need you, here's your tasks for the day and whatever. And the fact, I mean, they're lucky to be working with you. The fact that you go, all right, I know this is totally crazy, but the first week I just need you to listen to me, and the second week we'll start getting into more questions and teaching and this and that and the other.
And that all stems from, again, a lot of these lessons that I try to put into practice are things that I wish I had when I was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all want a little assurance when we're trying something new. And that could go for any position, new operators, new firsts, new seconds, new whatever. Everybody wants a little assurance that it's okay. And we recognize where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that and we're accepting that. And we know that there's room to grow. That's why you're here.
That's great.
But to actually voice that can go a long way. Because, especially for interns or PAs, it could be overwhelming. You're on a set for the first time. This is your dream. And if you feel like nobody likes me, I'm always in the way, I don't know what to do with my hands, I don't know where to stand, my phone went off, they hate me, and you just go home feeling terrible. And that is, nobody does their best work when they feel bad.
Yep.
But if they're given direction and a task, that makes you feel like you have purpose and a place.
Yeah.
But it also tests you of, can you do the one thing that I'm asking you to do? And so in that first week, it can also be a test, and it's a barometer of how well do you follow directions. Yeah.
Basically, because it's just like, go do this, and then you look back and you go, oh, I told them to do that, and they did that, so now I can tell them to do that and
exactly.
that, and you build off of that. I've had camera PAs before who the first thing that they do is, I just directed a movie and I just directed this, and it's like, let me just give you a little piece of advice. Like, I want to hear that. That's great, but like, tell me that in week 3.
Yep.
Because if you tell me that on day 1 when we first meet, essentially what you're telling me is like, this is just a stepping stone for me. I'm not really, like, I'm above this. And it's like, that's not really what I want to be hearing, because I need to know that you're going to do basically what you, the second AC, are going to be telling them, and everything's going to work smoothly. And then we can get into all that stuff from there. But I know what you mean. It's like they want to come in and go, I can prove that I'm so much more than this because whatever. But it's a
huge opportunity, right? You want to step into it, and you want to say, like, I recognize what a fantastic opportunity this is. And I want to.
I have access to all this information and whatever. And one of the things that I always try to do, I did on Justify, you remember, is like right off the bat, I go to them, I go, look, here's the deal. Number 1, you got to do what you're asked to do. Number 2, you got to be out of the way. All that stuff, all those things are the most important. But when you figure out when there's quiet on the set and nothing's going on, and I happen to have the remote head out or whatever, and I'm not doing anything, and you don't have something to do, and the actors were waiting in the action, nothing's happening, feel free to come up and ask me, and I'm happy to talk you through, but and even put you on it and whatever. But it's got to be the right time and the right place and all that stuff.
I think you hit on something that's really important, and that is whatever your task is on set, right? If you are a PA, an intern, a loader, a second, show up and do that position to the very best of your ability. Take pride and take ownership in your work.
Yep.
And I always say, even if you're a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger in all the land. I am the king's ditch digger. Take pride in your job title.
Yeah. We years ago there was a second AC on a movie. No, it was a TV show. I'm not going to say what it was, but in outside of Los Angeles. And he very quickly let me know that he was just doing this for the money and that he was really a DP. And right off the bat, I hate to say it, but I was sort of like, I just am not digging you because I don't understand what you're doing. And the third day of the show, we had a look. It was one of those mini moves where everything gets thrown into like a cube van and they bring, not everything over, but some of the stuff over. And I went, hey, I need something out of my toolbox. And, for anybody who doesn't know, Most Steadicam operators have some sort of like utility toolbox that I don't even know what's in there. It's stuff I've collected for 35 years, and I'm deathly afraid of getting rid of it because there's something in the bottom of it that I'll need someday that I don't even understand, but whatever. And he comes back and he's like, I can't find it. And I was like, well, it was at the last location because I know I pulled this out of it. I remember it was on the curb. And he goes, yeah, I'm not sure where it is. And I was like, so this is the point where you go and find it because that's part of your job and da-da-da. And he sort of started to give me attitude, and I was like, either go shoot something somewhere else and leave us, or go find my goddamn toolbox. And I think he very quickly got how serious this was, and he drove back to the location, and they had like left it in a diner or something, or whatever. And I said to him, look, dude, part of your job is to make sure that there's an idiot check and nothing's, but if you're going to leave something, leave a Panavision thing. Don't leave my personal, stuff.
Right, and if you leave something and it becomes a problem, you better show some remorse and fear on your face rather than, meh.
That's exactly it. It was sort of like, yeah, I'm sorry I did it. And again, of all the things in the world, it's like if he had left my, like, I don't know, my weather bag, I would have been like, all right, let's find it, but whatever. But it's just, So anyway, that's just one of those things. Like I said, the right response would have been like, we're not sure where it is. We're going to have it here in 10 minutes. We're finding it. And then like everybody running to find it, or whatever.
I still think that there needs to be a healthy fear. I certainly don't want anybody to go to work fearful, because you will never perform admirably if you're afraid.
Yeah.
But also nobody wants to be afraid to go to work. But I think a healthy amount of fear keeps you engaged, keeps you on your toes, and you're constantly questioning.
Yeah.
Right? Constantly checking.
Well, how can I do this better? Like, what am I not doing?
What am I missing? That
Yeah.
is I ask myself that 10,000 times a day. What am I missing? And I go through all the checks and balances of what am I missing? Because, if you can't think of anything, that's great. But just be engaged. Constantly checking back in.
Well, and it's funny. You said a healthy fear, and I don't disagree with that. But I always sort of look at it as, if you're not pushing yourself, it's like if it's become mundane and you're not trying to excel anymore out of your comfort zone, then it's probably time to move on to something else, because you're probably not doing your job as well as you could be, because you're not trying to improve.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you're reaching is usually when you do the best work, hopefully. And sometimes you fail, but that's the way that goes.
And I think it's okay if, for example, you're a second and you want to become a focus puller. I think for a lot of people, that's the natural next step, and it's okay, but I think you need to go into those jobs and let everybody know. Let the DP know, let your key first know, like, hey, I am a second. I do want to move up to focus pulling. If there are opportunities, we have a third camera and then I can become the focus puller, but you need to make that known so that there is some grace, because otherwise it's like, well, you might be on a job where you really need that second or that key second to be a key second and not move up and not move on and not be distracted by where else they would rather be. And I think you just have to, focus on what it is that you're being hired to do, because your job is so important.
Yeah.
And it's
on that note, I just realized, sorry to interrupt you, but I just realized I may have jumped ahead of things a little bit. For people who aren't in the industry or aren't as maybe working on fully staffed crews or whatever, what is the job of the second? And when you say the key second, what do you mean?
So the job of the second is you essentially are the second assistant camera to the first assistant camera, right? The focus puller. And your job includes you mark the actors, you slate the scene, you take camera notes, you are in charge of the tidiness and cleanliness of the carts where the gear goes. You're in charge of where the gear is kept. So that's sort of your wheelhouse. Your first AC is in charge of focus and running the camera and the menu settings, the build of the camera, etc. And you are in charge of sort of the back of the house.
So it's like the first AC is like the circle around the camera, which you're involved in somewhat also, but then like the next circle around that where all the gear is and then you're also involved in like making sure that next Friday we need an XYZ from from the rental house. So making sure of that, right?
Yeah, so then you get into sort of the, the differences between the key second, which is the A camera second, and the B second. And I think that the B second position is great for newer seconds, right? You might go from a utility or a loader position, and when you're moving up, the B camera position is a great place to be because you have a key second, an A second above you who can kind of lead the way, and maybe they have a little more experience. So I always say that the A second is the leader and the B second is the cheerleader. Hopefully they're bringing a good attitude if nothing else.
Yeah, yeah.
I also like to call the B second the A camera third, because when you are not doing anything related to B camera, you should be at the behest of the A second.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. It's funny because you say that, and it's like I laugh because this industry is so ridiculous. It's like I talked to Michelle LeBrucherie, who we both worked with, who's a first AD, and it's like, why can't there just be a first AD, a second AD, a third AD, a fourth AD? It would make it so much easier. But
yeah, and some of the responsibilities, like I said, the key second, they are more experienced. You don't leave the set as often. You are right there. In fact, you can sometimes be glued to your operator's hip because you are involved with the moving of the actors and, just anything that the operator needs. You are right there to physically go from their side to the middle of set where you might have to
remark someone or whatever.
Or to do anything that he needs done in front of the camera, because your focus puller is, at their station pulling focus and keeping the shot going, even through rehearsals, right? And so you have the physical ability to move around and do what needs to be done. And you're also looking ahead with a plan to delegate the task to the B second, the loader, the utility. So you are kind of mapping out not only your day, but perhaps next week or the gear, that's coming in and out. Sometimes you might have a first AC who really wants to be involved in that. And that just depends on who hires you. Personalities and what you are going to decide at the beginning of the show and prep, right? Like, these are going to be your tasks. These are going to be my tasks. And, the key second, you can really get involved with the one-liners, which is your production schedule. And you might be talking to the DP about, I want this lens in for this scene, and then you have to kind of chase that around and make sure that happens.
So you're an office manager on a level 2, right?
You can be.
The entire thing running.
It's interesting. There's a huge list of responsibilities that you can be in charge of as a second. And I think the longer you do it and the more experience you have, and also just how much you want to do, it's almost kind of limitless what you can be a part of or in charge of. You can do staffing, the management of the calendar and the gear in and out. You can be in charge of entire carnet shipments, which are going out of the country. You can be in charge of it's just sort of limitless, the things that you can. It
depends on the show and the people you're working with, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are some shows where you go on where you're just like completely overwhelmed with all this stuff, and there are other shows where you go on where you're being asked much less to do because the first AC is doing more of it or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just depends on your first,
and
how
then
involved they want to be with the paperwork or the gear and it's the dissemination of information, right? Sometimes you might have a DP that comes directly to the first AC, and then the first AC will give you information from there. Sometimes the DP is going to go directly to the key second because they are aware that the second is the one actually making the phone calls and writing the emails. And then I like to check in with my first of how do you want to do this? And then I include them on as many or as few emails as they want. But I always let them know, this is what I'm doing. This is a piece of information that I got. This is a rumor I overheard. All information goes to my key so that they can be the most informed.
And so right off the bat, if you're working with a new AC, do you basically just put it out there and go, what do you want me to be in charge of this? Do you want to do this too? And you just figure it out.
Yeah. And my working style is you tell me how you want it done and that's how we'll do it. I don't have an ego about it. There are ways that I might tend to do something, but if you want it done a certain way, great.
Yeah.
Great. It might be better for the project. Every project's different. Every crew is different. And that energy can stem, from producer, director, DP down. It doesn't, you just have to be fluid.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So going back to you did the second AC job on that movie, and then did you just start second ACing from there?
I actually loaded for many years.
Okay.
And in film.
Loaded film.
Loaded film. And I loved being a loader. And the only reason I moved up to be a second, officially and finally in my career was because a longtime first that I worked for, we were doing a low budget movie and I had to be a second and loader. And I said, well, I've never really seconded in this capacity and it's just going to be me. And he said, listen, you're going to do this. You're moving up. And I won't hear it. And that's it. And you're gonna be fine. But I loved loading 35.
What aspect? Because I loaded for a little bit. I mean, I was really a loader second when I did it, and I just found it to be sort of tedious, and I found it to be kind of anxiety ridden, just because it was like, oh, I don't want to mess this up or whatever. What did you like about it?
It's really zen. I just loved having my hands in the bag or in the dark room. But then also, you think about all the responsibilities that the loaders bear. We take care of everybody's time cards.
That's true.
It's the personal concierge service. You're kind of
Well, there's stuff that's sort of like as it's needed to do. It's like, well, the first AC is not going to do it, so they give it to second AC. Second AC doesn't have enough time, so they give it to the loader. So it's like there's a trickle down effect of stuff that's left over.
You sort of take care of the department, and I love that aspect of it. Of you just see what needs to be done and you do it. And as a loader, you had a lot of flexibility to kind of run back and forth between the truck, and you can you're free to run around and make all this stuff happen. Maybe I need to scout the next location. Maybe I need to go run up to the office. Maybe I need to make phone calls or emails or move this guy's car or get them coffee or take their... You're taking care of everybody, but everybody's so joyful when... because they're all indebted to you because you make the best coffee and your time card's always right and, you never drop the ball. So I just loved that aspect of, wow, every time I come in the room, I'm a little joy bringer because I'm bringing something.
It's an excellent, I hadn't thought about it like that, but it's funny you say about the coffee because there's happened a couple of times where we've had loaders who were like they should be baristas. I mean, they have like a corner of the truck set up.
The Starbucks aspect really helped me in my career.
But there is a thing where it's like, hey, who was that guy who made the great? Oh, that was. Let's get him back because he made really good coffee and he did a good job of obviously. But it's stuff that makes you stick out, right?
Well, and that's the important thing too. And this is something that I think is really important. Imagine you and everybody else in your classification, imagine you all have the same skill set when it comes to doing the job. Okay, what is going to set you apart? That is your attitude and that is your willingness to jump in, your enthusiasm. It is you as a human, which is why it's so important to just be yourself and find the people and the crews that you naturally fit in with, because that is how you will excel and you will be happy in your job.
Did you ever have a bad experience as a loader where you just didn't gel with the crew and it was like, these are people I never want to work with again?
No, I think I've had jobs that were perhaps a little more demanding. But I've never had a terrible experience where I was just like...
So you loaded for how long?
Oh, probably 3 or 4 years.
And then you jumped to seconding exclusively.
Second AC.
And that's what you've been doing ever since.
Yeah, and I am a career second.
I was going to ask you, is there a desire? There's no desire to move to?
No.
Just because you like what you're doing or because you don't want to pull focus?
No,
Because you've actually pulled focus a couple times. You bumped up like a day or two, I remember, or something.
No,
Someone was sick
so for anybody listening, if you want a key second who is super dialed into being a key second,
and you don't have to worry about going anywhere.
Girl. God, no. Actually, I love being the rock. I would promote if my utility or my loader, they pull focus and they want to pull out a third body and do a crazy shot. I'm like, get that person in here. They pull focus on their friends' movies all the time. They are fantastic. And, it's been offered to me.
Yeah.
Certainly. People have asked, like, do you want to move up? Are you ready to move up? And I'm like, and leave seconding? Are you mad?
That's
No.
fantastic. But there's something great. I mean, I'm like that with operating. And I have tried other things, but I just like operating. It's like it's what I enjoy. And there's something great about that because you're doing what you enjoy. You're not trying to go, I'm doing what I enjoy, but I'm really trying to X, Y, and Z. And there's something great about that.
No, the only thing I'm trying to do is get better.
Yeah.
All the time. And I want to do a show with people, and new people, and at the end of the show, if they're happy and they say, I would work with you again in a heartbeat, that is when I know that I have been successful with that show or that crew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, that's the reward. That is what I'm chasing. Would you recommend me? Would you hire me? Would you put me in your deal and take me everywhere with you? Am I a side letter to your next show?
Yeah.
Do I need to talk to your agent?
Maybe part of your deal.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's great. So you touched on the fact that the second AC marks actors. So you're involved with actors quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you're actually generally down towards their feet, but you're physically close to actors. How do you go about working with have you ever worked with really tough actors who are just like, I don't want to be marked, and someone else is telling you to mark them, or, what do you do?
Absolutely. So, first you respect, if an actor says, I don't want to be marked,
Mm-hmm.
and your operator is like, mark them, this is how I would approach that.
Yeah.
I would physically have eye contact with my operator, and I would gently put up the weight. Like, I got it. I hear you. I understand. You're silently communicating all the time across the room.
Give them some sort of physical,
Yep.
just hold on a second.
I acknowledge you. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get under this person's feet. Here's the thing. You can remember precisely where these people are dancing around the room, right? If they're standing at the window and the doorbell rings, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the door, okay? You don't need to be underfoot.
During the rehearsal.
During the rehearsal, you and the operator can work with the stand-in later after that particular actor leaves, and you can say, okay, this is where they were, this is the dance, this is the scene, right? You can remember.
So you just sort of
positions.
mentally make checkpoints of they went there
Absolutely.
and they went there and they went there. And are you on a personal level, are you keeping all this in your head, or are you writing them down, or?
Usually in my head, just because I try to look at, this is how I approach marking, right? Most moves are motivated by either dialogue or action.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. And the timing, right?
Yeah.
So step back and think about the scene, what's going on. And people usually move, again, if somebody enters the room, everybody's attention is now on that person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody goes to the bar, they're usually delivering a line. You just think about the scene as a whole and where people are moving and what they're motivated by. It's the same thing when there's a big fight scene or a big tussle, right? I always get the question of, how do you mark when two people are having a fight?
Yeah.
And my response is, you don't. You wait. And usually at the point of impact, or where the fight starts to happen, I wait for the actors to leave, and then I just leave an X. I say, this is where the action happens. I'm just going to leave a big tape
Like this
X.
is the center of where they're doing what they're doing. Yeah.
And when people or actors are moving quickly in a scene and you need to mark them, don't get underfoot. Just wait. Wait for them to leave that mark, and then you can quickly throw down a tape mark after they've left.
Yep.
I'm 4'11". I'm quite small. And I often work with people who are much larger than myself. And early on in my career, I would be marking, and they might literally fall over backwards over me. And it's kind of embarrassing. So I've learned, because you want to be a ninja, right? Everybody understands what a marking rehearsal is. Most experienced actors understand that they're going to have a second in the way.
Yep.
Sometimes, if it's a big scene, you'll have the AD or the DP say, let's pause, let's mark everybody here, especially if it's a bigger scene with many actors. Critical marks. Giving
you a moment to go, I got to mark 3 people, and now let's continue. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you never want your marking to be distracted. And Dave Seekins, who is now a first AC, actually gave me a really great piece of advice when marking, because I had my tape roll and I was going to be Johnny on the spot. And he's like, it's really distracting when you you tear off the tape off of the roll and then you rip it and then you place it down. He's like,
while people are running lines.
While people are running lines, it's really quiet, and he's like, all I can hear you doing is the ripping of the tape. So we came up with these tape boards where we have pre-cut pieces of tape, and you can quickly, sort of lay marks at the feet and just shoot them down. And, it's you're quiet.
Well, it's like you said, it's constantly honing your craft and again, if something's problematic, how do we fix the problem?
And you get creative, and those are the moments where you get to make it your own, right? Like, how am I going to make this my own? Because I don't get to design the shot. I don't decide where the focus is. But arts and crafts all day long. Oh yeah, baby, yeah. Watch this.
That's classic.
Yeah,
that's great. And then you talked about working with one thing I'm going to ask you whether you've noticed this. I'm noticing now that we're in digital, and the first AC is sometimes in another room.
Sure.
Which drives me crazy, but sometimes it does have to happen, but it doesn't always have to happen. That I have more interaction with the second AC than I do with the first AC. The first AC used to sit next to me, and we would talk all day long, and now they're off somewhere else in the second AC. So I'm finding that more and more second ACs are just jumping to become operators, largely because the first ACs don't always want to move up because they lose a lot of rental, which is its own thing. And so there's not the opportunities, but also because the second ACs are learning more from operators than first ACs are.
Absolutely. And especially if you have a great relationship with your operator and the more trust you build, you can touch every single piece of gear.
Totally.
And you can, like I said, you might be attached to their hip.
Yep.
And, in working with you, we've worked together for years now, and I feel totally comfortable standing right next to you, talking about the shot or listening to you when you do the shot. Hey Dave, I see that they moved. I see the problem here. I'm going to go move that actor 2 inches to the left. Are you okay with that? And then you can start sort of collaborating, with your operators. It's not like, oh, it's the second AC. I have to wait to be told what to do. You can be right there.
Yeah.
And you're touching all the gear, right? Because you're usually putting the heads on the dolly. Okay, well, then you start to balance the camera. And then, okay, I know this shot's going to be here. Dave's not going to want that. He's going to want this monitor. And then you just start building it in anticipation of knowing what the operator needs. And so if you are in you're a second, but ultimately you want to be an operator, go stand next to your operator all day long.
Well, and the other part of that is if I have to run to the bathroom and the AD needs to see a rehearsal, it used to be that the first AC would go, I got this, and they'd operate it and whatever. But now the first AC is pulling focus in another room, so a lot of times I'll go to the second AC, hey, can you just run this rehearsal for them? And, if it's too complicated, I won't do it. But if it's just a straight push-in, it's just like, hey, just keep it pointed that way so that they can look for lighting. I'm going to go, grab a cup of coffee or something like that. But that's the person that I'm asking because they're right there.
No, absolutely. And, that if the second is able to physically see the shot from a monitor, right, and an actor doesn't hit their mark, I think a really nice moment when I've seen that before the operator even has to tell me, I have the opportunity to give the I got you symbol from across the room, and I can walk over to the actor and, say nicely, like, hey, it's really best for us or better for us if you come to here, if you can, and it's nice when you have the relationship with the actors where you can actually talk to them like humans, but if they don't quite hit their mark or they're a foot or two shy and the frame just isn't as nice or they have to compromise what they're doing. If I'm paying attention and I can help the actor get on their mark versus playing telephone because I'm on my phone doing something I shouldn't be. Is there anything you do to try to create a relationship with the actors specifically? Yeah, absolutely. So, as a second AC, you're at their feet all day long, but then also you are the last person that they see prior to doing the scene.
Because you're sliding right in front of them.
You're right there. Yeah. And you have to be in their personal space. And, as you know, when you slate, you're going to have to be pretty close to their face. And like I said, you're at their feet. So having a good relationship with the actors is important. And you don't have to become buddy-buddy, and sometimes you don't say more than necessary, but you try to have a good relationship and let them know who you are. Yeah. Because you need them to be comfortable with you. And, marking is a whole thing that we can get into. Or I'm sorry, slating.
So tell me about slating.
So slating, another huge part of what we do. Slates have to be neat.
Neat meaning clean.
Yeah, neat meaning clean. Work on your penmanship. I want you to imagine that a lot of people are watching dailies. They're in the editing room. You are going to be on camera all the time.
And you are probably, I mean, if it's a wide shot, you actually will be, as opposed to just the slate. You'll be in there as
yes,
well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if there's a problem, or if they're not happy with your department and they see your slates are really sloppy, it's going to be kind of a reflection of you. And also, you think about you have your slate and it's pre-written with the scene and you toss it on your bag. I can't tell you how many times producers go over and take pictures because it's cool. It's the slate, right?
That's right.
And they're going to send it to their friends and family. Well,
or post it on...
Right, or post it on social if they're an executive producer and they get to do that sort of thing.
Yep.
Like, do your numbers look like garbage, or is this like a truly professional? Oh man, that handwriting.
See, I never would have thought about this. It's also why it would be a terrible second, because I can't. My writing is horrible. But
well, it's optics, right? I mean, that's part of what makes a good second, is that we are neat, we are organized, we pay attention to details. Details matter in every single thing that we do, and a slate is a huge reflection.
That's
of
great.
That.
I honestly never would have thought about that.
And then in terms of slating and helping your operator, do everything you can to allow your operator to not break their frame to accommodate your slate.
So bring the slate into the frame,
Right.
rather than having them find the slate.
And, when you walk by the camera, most of the operators, there's a monitor that you can see prior to walking up. So you know exactly what their starting frame is, right? Are they on the hand? When they're writing a letter, are they on a face? Are they on the dog? Where are they starting? Go put the slate there that they don't have to break their frame. Your operator will really appreciate that. Your focus puller will appreciate that too, that they're not having to chase you all over the room.
Especially, by the way, if you're starting on something that's not in the frame, you're holding a frame that someone walks into.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
the worst one, because you've found it and then suddenly you've got to go find it again. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and especially, and slating can also help or hurt your focus puller. If you're, like you were saying, we call it a blind entrance, and that's where the actor is going to walk into frame, but there's nothing in the frame to indicate to the focus puller where in the room you are. And so what I do is that I slate over the actor mark so that focus should not be moving.
Yeah.
And at that point, the frame is so tight that you are able to leave a mark on the ground, and you just place your slate directly over it. And I always say into my walkie before I hit the sticks, I'm over their mark, so that my first knows that I'm paying attention to them, and my operator knows that I'm paying attention to their frame.
Yeah.
Do not accommodate me. I will accommodate you.
It's funny. I think I'm so used to this stuff, I don't even realize it until you say it.
It's because you only work with me. And
but I recognize that it happens, but it's just like, it's so normal that I don't really think about it. That's amazing.
And also knowing when to tail slate, where you are hitting the sticks at the end of the scene rather than at the beginning. There are a couple instances in which you should know. One is if it's truly emotional, right? Let's not compromise or distract the actor from the scene.
Don't start the actor with a big snap.
Right, exactly. We can wait. Also, if the frame is, maybe you're on a crane and you're starting high and wide and you can't possibly see the slate or the numbers, but you end down on the ground, that's another great opportunity to tail slate. If there is a big explosion or a crash or a stunt, maybe just tail slate it, don't.
There's enough going on.
Yeah, there's enough going on that we don't need to worry about the slate. Or maybe there's, maybe you got the rain towers. Let the rain towers do their thing. And you can run out there later with the slate. It doesn't always have to be at the head of the scene. You just have to gauge the situation. And then also common sticks where you are clapping one set of sticks for multiple cameras. Sometimes the space doesn't allow for multiple people to be in the room. Sometimes the scene is a little too precious and you don't want all that noise and all that distraction. So these are just things, the nuances, right, that you gauge
Details, like you said.
Details. And then as a second AC, sometimes my operator or the AD or the first AC will suggest that I do tail slates. And sometimes I will offer it up if I think that it's more appropriate for me to not be in the room prior to the scene starting. So, as a second, you can think about those things, and you should think about those things.
Yeah. So you work with operators closely, like we talked about. So in your eyes, what are the traits of a good operator? What are the traits of a bad operator? What makes someone a bad operator?
I think sometimes when you overcomplicate a shot or you try to fit too much in, if you're trying to, sometimes we overcomplicate it and too many moves, too many toys need to come on set. I've heard you say sometimes it's easier just to throw the camera on a sandbag on the ground and that's the shot. Or, in the instance of just because you have a slider on doesn't mean the camera needs to move.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
If you take if you keep adding these shots for vanity rather than
No, but you're saying, like, if you're trying to do something that makes you look good versus maybe propelling the story.
Yeah, and also can you cut out setups because you tell the story in one sweeping motion?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you not have the, are you afraid to speak up and say, well, if we just brought them around the corner here, we could connect them here, and then you're really telling a better story while we're also getting rid of setups and we're saving time and it's a nicer frame. And sometimes that comes down to, are they able to work out with the director or the AD, a different dance in order to make a better shot and move the day along.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about, from your point of view as a second AC, what makes an operator, what do you look for in an operator as a second AC?
Knowing the gear that they want and knowing when to use the right tool.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, as opposed to going, give me this. Oh, no, let's try this. Oh, no, let's try this.
Yeah, are we trying 3 different heads, 2 different sliders?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're moving the track. Now we're adding another 3 feet. And then we go back to square one. And we've made a lot of noise. We've had a lot of equipment going on. There's a lot of flurry or activity happening around our camera. That's sometimes not great.
Not drawing attention to yourself.
Yeah, not drawing attention to yourself. No loud sighs or, and I think a lot of it too with everybody. Look, we're in a passionate...
I failed that one.
Yeah, we're in a passionate industry, and if you don't like a shot and then you whip the camera down, you tilt down really, really quickly because you're not happy with the shot, and then you give an exasperated, that's not good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'll be honest, I probably have done that more than once. Sometimes it gets the best of you, but I try not to. You're right. Yeah. No, but that's a good example.
I think sometimes, especially maybe with a B operator, because that's a whole dance in itself, right? Right. When the B operator should be thinking or looking for shots to complement the A operator, or when they should simply step back. Mm-hmm. And I joke, we say, he's got his fishing pole out, he's fishing for a shot.
Yeah.
And it's like, go sit down.
Yeah.
Read the room. I think that's always hard when, if I've ever worked with an operator who's really excited and I'm like, oh man, they are not reading the room. And they are about to go in and walk into a hornet's nest and be like, I could just put my camera over here. It'll be real fast. And I think that's the other thing that I'm not too keen on is when my operator's like, yeah, real fast. We're just going to come over here. We're going to do this lens and this build. And, we got to get it done in 30 seconds because you just had a great idea. And now the director or the DP's like, yeah, sure, you can go over there. And you can tell that they don't want the shot, but now it's hustle mode. And man,
you're not even sure why it's necessary.
No, he just wants to get in there and prove that he's earning his, they are earning their paycheck today. He or she is ready to go.
Yep. What about, do you prefer operators to give you any information they have about what's coming up next?
Oh, I love when operators can tell me in advance what they're thinking, even if it changes. That's totally fine. But if you want to give any sort of warning or advanced, even a text or a phone call of like, hey, I think for tomorrow when you arrive on set. I think I really want to have steady up first. I had a conversation last night.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I love that. Give me all the information. Give me all the rumors. Give me all the details. Anything I can do to jump ahead, absolutely.
Well, I know on set you've come up to us and gone, hey, I can't guarantee this, but I just heard that this is the last shot before we move and da-da-da. So because you've always got your ear out there listening to everybody else. But it is right. It's like it's all about sort of trying to project what's coming down the pike so you can be ahead of it before it happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And no secret cinema. That's what I always say. No secret cinema. Don't if you know something, share it with your with your friends who it concerns. Absolutely. So, or if I hear that the actor's having a meltdown, I might if I'm working with Dave, I'm going to go to Dave and be like, hey, so, lockbox, like, don't share this, but I thought I'd give you a heads up.
Something just happened, which is actually kind of invaluable because then I know that when that person comes to set, it's like, okay, we're going to sort of treat this with kid gloves. I'm going to probably not be as involved as I might be in another time because there's something else going on, like, the actor and the producer just got into a screaming fit over something or other. It's like, all right, I'm just going to hold back right now, but that's great information.
And I think another good rule is, you may think that you know everything that's going on, but there's always things in the works.
Yep.
Right. Everybody's got a plan. Everybody's got their version of how the day's going to go, or everybody knows a little piece of the puzzle that you might not know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I haven't really asked you about is the sort of second AC working with the DP. We've talked about working with the operator. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. This really comes into play with your note-taking. I often find that, especially now, working on these long format TV shows or bigger movies, eventually you're going to run into these second units. And I can't tell you how many times the DP, emails me or says to me, hey, we have to reshoot, scene X, Y, and Z, and we're going to send out, this DP. Do you have the notes on that? And, that's where you can really shine of like, yeah, I have, the color temperature. I have all the information that they're going to need. I can tell you, are they reshooting it? Is it a continuation? Are they matching something? I try to get all the details so that I can provide the forensic notes of this is what we did this day. And then, you can really kind of show up and be the hero. Basically doing your job, but doing it well and having all that information for your DP. They will appreciate that. In
this day and age, is there like an app that you use for that, or you just use an old-fashioned notebook, or what do you do?
So we tend to use an app called ZoeLog, and it is a digital app that you can share with other members. You can email the notes. It's very clean. There's no more, we used to write it all down in a book, a camera log book.
That little book.
Yeah, so the camera log book can get lost. You might not be able to read their handwriting. It could get wet. A lot of things can happen to it. So now we have this great app in ZoeLog, ZoeLog. And I try to do, when I have time, ridiculously detailed notes of including location. Maybe if we used a slider or a specialized head, or if we were on the Ronin, I try to give specifics, not just about lens information, color, temperature, T-stop, or distance, but what were we doing on that day? Because you will forget. What was the location, etc. So I try to give notes or keywords that I'm going to remember.
That's great. Yeah. We were talking before this about doing this podcast, and one of the things we talked about was you said that you had sort of a mental list of things that you respond with sometimes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, there's a lot of information flying at you all the time on set, and you're going to get requests and you're going to get directions. And I always find that it's good to just listen. And then you respond with 3 words. These 3 words are going to save you, and they can apply to so many things. You got it. That's it. You got it. And it can be, it can be said with enthusiasm, or it can be said with, that is a terrible idea, but you got it. So much can be held in those. So basically,
because it's non-committal, not in the sense of just basically like, I'm hearing you exactly, and I'm going to move forward on whatever that is, as opposed to like, yeah, that'll happen in 5 minutes or whatever, because it's the acknowledgement, right?
Yeah, and I think also, the DP is going to give you a whole list of things, and you're like, oh wow, that's a lot. Okay, all right, you got it.
Yeah.
Or I want this, or this needs to happen, or this needs to happen, etc.
And then you turn around, and as you walk away, you're like, okay, I have no idea how I'm going to make this work, but I got to start figuring it out.
Yeah, but on the surface, right? It's all about optics. Of just, you got it. Now, if you come across something that you're really not sure, you need to immediately go to your first AC and be like, all right, this is what I was just asked to do. I have no idea.
This can't happen for some reason.
This can't happen. Yeah. I have no idea how to make this happen. I don't even know what this person is talking about.
Yep.
Help me out. So I think that's the other thing too, is you have to admit when you don't know something immediately. Maybe not to the person who just told you to do something. Maybe you want to go have a conference with, your department.
So-and-so just said this to me. What does that mean?
Right. Do you know something that I don't know?
Yeah.
Right? Again, there's information coming at people all the time from all different places, and you don't know. And it's okay to also say, okay, let me go work on that. Mm-hmm. You got it. I'll get back to you is another fantastic one. I'll get back to you. And then, go talk to somebody who can help you.
Yeah. No, but and I think your point of doing it quickly is it's important, because the reality is, if, as an operator, if I go, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you go, yep, and then I don't hear anything for 30 minutes, and then it comes back and it's like, yeah, that can't happen. It's like, well, what's been going on the last 30 minutes? If you had told me that 30 minutes ago, I could have gone, really? Why? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so let's do this instead.
Yeah, and I think also in that moment, if you do have information where, if my operator says to me, I want to make this thing happen, and if I know something that might conflict with that, how I would phrase that, or what I might say is, if I may, I have a piece of information that may change your feelings on this, and then I'll proceed to give the piece of the puzzle that I have, and then you can then say, oh, okay. I get it. Okay, we're not going to do that. That's a terrible idea. Or you can say, oh, I can actually fix that situation. Let's talk to the AD. Let's loop in whoever we need to loop in to make it happen. But it's all about communication, and it is a dance of knowing when to step in and knowing when to say, you got it. Sometimes you might have a better idea, but it doesn't always mean that you need to voice that.
Yes. Because sometimes there's too many opinions in the room already.
Absolutely. And you need to be able to follow a hierarchy of order sometimes. And that's okay. And not every day has to be perfect. And not every, you can have a little tension in the department, and you can have it out later on the truck, which, by the way, if you're going to have it out, I recommend the camera truck. That's a great venting zone. That's a safe space, right? Like,
you can throw sandbags and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can have it out, but on set, you need to maintain that professional decorum, and that matters. Again, it all goes back to these optics matter. Mm-hmm. It really does, because you don't want to be displaying all these things that later you might be regretting, because in the heat of the moment you're emotional about something. Because look, we work long hours, we work in really tense situations, weather is a factor,
and you don't know what's going on in someone's home life, by the way, where like things could be totally falling apart and they're just barely keeping it together, and it's and that's all part of it. But to what you were saying, 3 people are already putting in their opinions, and you don't need the 4th, but you may have some amazing information that changes everything. It's the kind of thing, to me, where it's like, I still want that, but it's like you let it die down, and then 2 minutes later you go, I just want to throw this in. I didn't want to get in the middle there, but blah, 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 blah. Does that change things for us? Is there a better way to do this? And maybe there is, and maybe there isn't. But there are ways to get that information in where it's not upsetting the apple cart, and you're not getting 5 other opinions on it when it's put out there, Yeah. So I think timing is so key to all that, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes, I think from a focus puller standpoint or an operator standpoint, sometimes you just want the thing done. Sometimes you don't want to talk about it.
I don't care. Just
there's
do
a
it.
lot of mental energy that has to go to the front of the set for the operator. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you chiming in as a second, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
And you need to know when it's appropriate, when it's appreciated, and when your silence is golden.
Mm-hmm. So are there certain things that you make the active choice of just like, you know what, I'm not sending that up the line. We're just going to fix that. And nobody needs to be bothered with this information.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just about reading the room.
Yeah. And so like, you're making judgments on that all the time of like, this needs to go up the ladder. Like, no, we can take care of this without.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. And like I said, be like water, right? Just you fill in the empty space. You see what's already been done or taken care of or covered, and then your job as a second is to be water, right? You're fluid with the situation, fluid with the moment, and you just do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And sometimes less is more.
Yeah, no question about that. We were talking about a job that you have coming up where you're going out of the country.
Yeah.
And you were talking about making your deal, because for people who aren't in the industry, you get a local job in Chicago, it's a little bit cookie cutter. There's some discussion of this or that or the other, but it's like the union covers it, and there's 90% of it is already like dialed in, and it's just knowing a couple of things. But when you're going out of the country, it's a very different situation, right? Because it's not under the union, so you have to sort of protect yourself. And you actually have to do much more of what I have to do as a Steadicam operator. I'm constantly making a deal because there's a lot of different things that aren't covered by the union. So now you have to do the whole thing. So tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so it's been good. I'm lucky. They offered me, I had a number in my head, and it's funny because hourly, when you're covered under the contract, right, we work most commonly under the basic agreement, which is just the general contract.
That's the union contract,
contract, right? And your rate is pretty much set, your hourly rate, etc. When you go into overtime, double time,
it's all spelled
meal
out.
penalties, it's all spelled out. But then you might leave the country for a job, and you are on what's known as a flat rate. So you're going to get what you get for the week, and then maybe you have set hours that you're working, and you have to negotiate within that. And that's what I'm having to do. And, it's good to get everything in writing, the finer points, and you have to think about everything. And the writing, I think, protects not only you, but as Dave and I were discussing earlier, it protects production as well, and they know exactly what to expect from us, so that there's no harsh words or harsh reality. And you have to really sit back and not argue, but you have to fight for what you're worth, right? You are presenting a case of, look, this is why you're bringing me, and this is what's going to save you in the end, and then you can spell it out on paper.
But you were even saying that which it sounded like is not normally what you do, that you were even going, it needs to be a certain type of accommodations with the crew.
So
it has to be a certain size. And
so when I was making my deal, they sent me in an email very loose deal points of, we will cover your accommodations, we will be paying into your pension, health, and welfare. This is your rate, and they gave me a number for the rate, and they gave me some other specifics, and then I countered with, for clarity, leaving no room for interpretation, I want to state the exact number of hours that you are paying into my pension, health, and welfare per week, per the basic agreement overseas, contract. But
you actually cut and pasted that part.
I cut and pasted it so that I had it in writing, so that they knew that I wasn't pulling this number out of thin air, that this is at the very least because I am, overseas provision is the actual word that it is. So you're copying and pasting that. But then also specifically, this is where I would like to stay, naming specifically the hotel or the apartment building. I would like to be with the rest of the department. You state your name, or state your, state the place, and just get really specific. And it's important. It can't just be this vague, like, yeah, we're going to put you up in a hotel. Okay, what hotel?
Yeah. Where is it?
Where is it? Will I be getting a SIM card for my phone? Or are you going to, in my kit rental, cover, the international phone plan for the next 6 months? Like, how are we accommodating specifically what I will be required to adhere to when I'm over there?
Look, the SIM card thing, that even is a small thing, because if you're there for 5 months, that adds up. And it's sort of this thing of, look, production is requiring me to go to another country. I need to be in touch with my family. Therefore, I'm going to make this part of the situation. And they can always say no to that, but then you have to be okay with that.
Well, they can also say no, but you have to remind them that your phone is how you do business and how you do your job.
You, yeah, absolutely.
And I think you just have to, when you're making your deal points, you have to spell it all out. Leave no room for interpretation.
Yep. There's no question about that. Look, the funny thing is I have a deal memo that I don't require them to sign basically on a personal level, because people always go, the lawyers won't let us sign this. And at the end of the day, if Warner Brothers wants to take me to court, I'm going to lose. So that's just that. So I just tell them, here's the deal. Here are all my deal points. If you have any problem with them, email me back and tell me what you have a problem with. We can talk about them. If not, just email me back with this in here and say, yes, we're in agreement on all that. And every time there's a problem that comes up with production, and I'll give you an example, I then refine it. So for instance, 4 years ago, my equipment, which is in these heavy duty metal cases that are, they can be run over by a truck and they're fine, were sent back via FedEx, which is usually how it goes. And it came, and one of the latches had come open. Clearly someone had checked something or whatever, because they're always taped and whatever, but one of them had come open and it had been sheared off. And so I contacted FedEx, because there's insurance and everything. And I said, you obviously need to cover this. And they said, well, that's not an acceptable form of packaging for FedEx. It would have needed to be in a cardboard box. And I'm thinking, really, the thing that a truck can drive over isn't? So I went to production, and production said, well, that's FedEx's problem. And I could see where it was going. So I called the company, and they were like, send us a picture. And I sent them a picture. They go, you know what? It's a $40 fix. Bring it in. We'll do it. So I said, great, I'll eat that. But now there's in my deal memo that if there's ever any damage to my cases that is not covered by the shipping company, that production covers it. So it's like every time something happens, and like on a smaller level, like the SIM card, I have in my deal memo that I have to have a place with washer and dryer in my unit, because the truth of the matter is, on the weekend, the last thing I want to do is go sit in a laundromat.
No, absolutely.
And they could say no to that, and then I have to accept that or not accept that. But it's those little things that actually make a huge difference. So is this the first time you've ever had to make a deal like this?
Yeah, I would say this is the biggest deal that I've made on my own, where I'm leaving the country and I get to do, I was joke. I'm like, I get to make my first big girl deal where I'm negotiating back and forth for, and you're going to ask for exactly what you want. And it feels good to be in a position in your career where you feel comfortable doing that, because I feel like a lot of times, especially if you're newer in the business or in a lower position on the totem pole, you don't feel that you have as much power.
Or the right to ask
or the right to ask for more, or truly what you're worth or what you want. And, I always say, look, you don't ask, you don't get.
That's true. No one's giving it to you. So did you call people up and go, hey, I've never done this whole thing. Like, how do I do this? What do I ask for? Like, did someone give you a template or? Yeah,
absolutely. So I did talk to people who have gone, actually specifically where the location that I am going on different projects. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, when you're making a deal for overseas, because we're not covered under the contract, how do you go about that? Yeah. How do you calculate what are you worth? And I came up with a number that I wanted to see on my check every week. And then I just did the math, like, okay, divide that by 60 hours or 50 hours or whatever. This is my hourly rate. This is what my kit rental is, and this is what I'll be getting for per diem. Together, this makes the weekly number that I want to see on my paycheck.
Yep.
And I did ask for people for templates to see what they've asked for to...
Smart.
Yeah, and then you just get it all in writing of like, this is how I will travel, right? So I will travel no less than business class. I will, my accommodations will be to this standard. I will have the SIM card, little basic things like that you're going to need.
And if you're going international, you should also Google the place that they're going to be shooting and staying, so you can see whether it's safe, whether it's, whatever. Yeah. Basically, at the end of the day, you don't assume, because when you assume is when you get there and you go, well, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be.
And even though it's not, union, I did call the union. I am involved in Local 600. I'm on the board, NEB, and I have a very close relationship with my business agents who are always looking out for me. And I just gave them a heads up of like, hey, I'm leaving the country. I'm on this job. They looked it up and said, okay, they are. It is a overseas deal, but you are entitled to 75 hours a week of pension, and healthcare
Other
hours.
people might not have known that.
And they might not have known. But it's, and I put that number specifically in my deal. And to the producer, because you're always wanting to make, right, this is the first impression that these are the first conversations. Yeah, this is your first introduction to the producers and the money people, right? And it's always the hardest conversation to have because it's money.
Yep.
And I hate that. By the end of the show, I have a great rapport with these people, and it's so friendly, and they're like, oh, it's an absolute pleasure to work with you. Yeah. But that's so far from where you're at on day one. And you have to have the most complicated conversations, money, right? Yeah. It's a very emotional conversation to have, and it's a sticking point, right? Because you want one thing, and they're like, oh, well, we can't possibly do that. We got to do another thing. And you almost wish you could say, you don't even understand how worth it I am. You don't even understand how much you're going to love me. Yeah. By the end of it. You're going to be happy to give me a raise by the end of it.
But the good news is you get past that, hopefully, and then you just put it behind you, and it's the end of the story. But talking about 600, so you're involved in 600. You're on the National Executive Board, which means you go to the meetings where we determine the rules of 600 and whatever, a couple times a year. What's that like? Why did you get involved? How is it? What do you suggest other people do it?
Yes. So I am on the National Executive Board, and I love it. It's being a part of the governance of our local is something that's really important to me because I get to play an active role in how, our local is, evolving and changing.
And since you're in Chicago, you're not New York, you're not LA,
right?
You're not Atlanta. I guess we can say Atlanta now also. Is part of it that you feel that you want to make sure that Chicago is heard? Is that
absolutely? Yeah. We are a small niche here in Chicago, but we have a lot of people who choose to stay. You can have entire careers here in Chicago. The cost of living is great compared to some of the more expensive places like LA and New York. We have just about enough work to satisfy everybody to where you can have a fantastic career here, raise a family here. You're in a major city. We get interesting projects. And it's nice to be able to really get to know the community on a first name basis. I think, especially if you're involved on the board, the National Executive Board, or in leadership here in Chicago, every single assistant by name. And you can touch people's lives and help them with their career on a one-on-one basis. I mean, that's huge. You have a helping hand in how people spend their entire career, how successful they can be, because we all work together for the betterment of just our community.
And what's been your experience of being involved in the NEB and being in the union? Is it fantastic? Is it frustrating? Is it educational? Is it
all of the above? No, it's fantastic because you really see what goes into the running of the local, and just seeing ideas from inception to getting it passed by the board to then rolling it out for our members to enjoy. You see the whole process, and that's pretty great. And it's frustrating. Especially with the crazy couple of years that we've had. We've lived through the pandemic, and now we've just gone through a strike. Yep. And there's some frustration. Our members are hurting. Members are frustrated. There's a lot going on. And, sometimes they'll say, the union's not doing enough. And it's hard, I think, sometimes being on the board, and it's like, oh my gosh, you don't know how much we're doing. We're sitting in hours and days of meetings, doing nothing but thinking about how we can help our members and how we can serve our members and how we can protect them from the future. And, everything that we do, we feel pretty good about, but we always know it's never going to be enough, try as we might. sometimes it's hard when members don't see that, or
What do you say to the members who go, the union doesn't do anything for me?
what are you doing for the union? And also, no, I lovingly,
That's good.
lovingly.
Yeah.
You are the union. I am the union. I always laugh at when people say, well, the union is not doing this or that. And I was like, well, it's not some abstract being. It's not the man behind the green
Yeah.
curtain, right? It's not Oz. Or I should say, it's not the wizard. You are the union.
Yeah.
I am the union.
I usually ask them when the last time they were at a regional council meeting, which
Yeah.
happens every month. The regional council meeting. Anyway, every month there's usually a meeting, and it's like, when was the last time you
Yeah.
were involved on any level? And my thing is always like, look, if you have a problem with it, you should get in and
Yeah.
change it. Also, the people who say it's never done anything, it's like, do you have health hours?
Yeah.
Do you have, are you getting hours? Are you getting a certain wage? I mean, there are things passively that happen that you don't even think about. And their thing usually is, well, I'm entitled to that. And it's like, no, you're only entitled to it because you're part of the union.
Right.
So it's
And we fight for that. Every
Yeah.
negotiation period, we fight for it.
Yeah.
We fight to keep what you have, and we fight to get more. And I would say to anybody listening who, we've raised some hairs on the back of your neck. If you don't feel heard, call me. You actually elected me. If you're in
Yeah.
the central region, you elected me. So call me, email, text me. If you cold call me, I will answer my phone. But I'm not the only one. And I often feel like when people are frustrated, maybe they feel like they're not being heard. And I always think, well, who can I put you in contact with who will help you to feel heard? And maybe they just don't know the path in which they need.
who to call.
Yeah, they don't know who to call, or, they're like, well, my rep didn't answer. And the business agents, as wonderful as they are, sometimes they get busy. But there's a whole group of other people that you can call, and that's anybody in the local council or the National Executive Board. We are all available to you, so please, reach out to us.
And all these names, if you go to the Local 600 website and you log in, because it's behind a firewall, you can find the names of everybody who's an officer. You can find the names of everybody who's all the business reps, all the representatives like Shannon and myself, and they're all reachable. I mean, we're all reachable.
Yeah.
People.
And we run, we don't get paid for this. That's the other thing that I wanted to put out, is that this is a volunteer position. So we do this because we love our local and we want to fight for a better local. Maybe you get involved with the council, or you run for the NEB because you want to get more involved in training.
Yeah.
Or safety, or the governance of, constitution and bylaws and negotiations. Whatever you're interested in, there is a place for you.
Yeah, where you think you can help. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no question. There's no lack of need for people who want to help and want to get involved. So I would highly recommend it. And then you guys do something which I think is worth putting out there. And you guys, but I mean the people from Chicago that I heard, where when you go to a National Executive Board meeting, which is where everybody from around the country gets together, actually always in Los Angeles because there's more people there. You then come back here and have like a coffee hour or something.
Yeah.
Where you answer people's questions, right?
Yeah, so we come home and we have 4 National Executive Board members from Chicago. So we are very well represented. And we have Ernie Malik, who's a publicist. We have Betsy Peoples, who is our sergeant at arms. We have Ella Lubianski, and we have myself, who we're all, involved in our local. And we host a coffee hour. We say, anybody who wants to hear firsthand what we talked about this weekend, this is the business that we got done. And we can just sit and answer one-on-one questions. And
That's
I find
great.
that the smaller meetings tend to, we have a great outcome.
Do people
or
show up?
A great turnout, I should
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And then we're in a safe environment where no question is too simple.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of times people, maybe you don't know the questions to
I'll
ask.
sound
or
like an
maybe,
idiot if I
you're
ask this
sounding
or
an
whatever.
idiot. Or,
Yeah.
you don't want to admit, like, I have no idea what these guys are talking about. I don't even know what this means.
Yeah.
The governance of our union can be extremely overwhelming
Yep.
and complicated. But if you sit down one-on-one with somebody and spend the time,
Yeah.
you understand it, and then you walk away feeling like, oh, well, I get it now. That sounds really hard. I want this thing, and now I understand in 20 different steps of why I can't have it overnight.
Yeah.
And I think that helps too.
But you have an amazing way of communicating with them that way. Granted, part of it is that you're in a smaller market. It would be a little tougher to do something like that in Los Angeles, but to do several of them, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's fantastic that you do that. When I heard that, I thought that's the way it should be with everybody.
And I feel like, just like with anything, if you're willing to sit down with somebody one-on-one and have a conversation about it, you get more done.
Yeah.
And it
No
feels
question.
very intimate, and it feels...
Well, and they feel heard. That's the big thing, right?
Absolutely.
And if you may not have all the answers, so you go, I don't know, I'm going to write it down. I'll get back to you, and
And a lot of it is that people do want to feel heard.
Yeah.
Right? Because we represent them. So
Yep.
we are speaking on their behalf. We are going to the floor with their ideas, their fears, their concerns, their questions. We are the voice. That is why they have elected us, and that's why we're there. So if you can actually sit down, and even if you don't agree, if you can sit down and have a back and forth, I think people find value in that.
Yeah. No
And
question.
also, even if you are on opposite sides of the table, they may not agree with you. They may not like your politics or your stance, but they may respect you.
Hopefully they respect the fact that you are explaining what your belief system is in this, and
Yeah.
and they may not agree, but at least they understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a big part of it.
Yes, and we need that.
Well, this has been really great. Do you have anything else you want to add in? Because I know you had a lot of stuff because you're so organized. There's been so much great stuff in here. And actually, I've learned stuff about being a second AC that I didn't know about. But anybody who's a second AC or wants to become a second AC, this is invaluable.
Yeah, and I love, I often have coffee with people or talk with people on the phone, people who are starting out, answering questions. Call me, email, text me. Anytime.
Yeah,
if I'm available, I can answer it.
Yeah. Shannon, this has been great, and there's just so much great information in here. I learned a lot about seconding, actually, that I didn't know. And for anybody who's getting into it or is in it, this is invaluable. I'm going to leave you with the question that I leave everybody with, which is someone getting into the business, any advice for them on how to succeed?
Yeah, some advice. I would say that, and this applies to not just seconding, but just overall being an assistant, being in this industry. The job is hard enough, so bring a good attitude. You have to be nice and respectful to everyone because you never know when you're going to see them again. And believe me, you will see them again. This business is a lot smaller than you think, and people talk. So I would take care with your reputation and take care with your words. When you're on set, really try to show up for the position that you've been hired. Even if you want to move on, it's okay to let it be known, but you really have to be there. There's no way that I would ever show up on a tiered set and give a tiered effort, ever. Because somebody might say, oh man, you had Shannon DeWolfe out there. That was amazing. And if I did a half-assed job, or if I didn't show up and they were like, actually, she was meh. She was just meh. She didn't show up. She didn't really care, and it was beneath her. I would die if somebody had that to say about me. So I really take care, because my name is everything. Your name is everything in this business. That's how we get work. So you want to have solid recommendations for people. So you have to show up every day in every detail. I don't care if it's that your marks are really neat or that you're trying to make your slate legible. You deal with a lot of people on set, and you never know where your work is coming from. You never know where the recommendation is going to come from. It could come from the rental house. It could come from the producer's assistant. Everybody in this business talks. This business is a lot smaller than you think. So take care of that.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening, and have a great day.